What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of my HLTV Fantasy. Today we are looking at EPL Season 20, Groups A and B. I'll first show how I did in the last fantasy, which was Bet Boom Dasha 2024 or whatever it's called. Either way, not doing very well. Falcons, very much so, letting me down here. Actually, the event isn't finished yet, but all of my players are eliminated after Mouse also lost to Eternal Fire yesterday, so the finalists are Spirit and Eternal Fire. Definitely the best lineups have double Spirit, I would assume. We can go check the best lineups, and I would assume it's a Donk lineup. Yeah, Donk, Chopper, Woxic, Major are currently playing, and then Shuhei as the fifth. Yeah, so essentially probably this kind of lineup is going to win with the double Eternal Fire gamble as well, unless they get really dumpstered by Spirit, and then maybe someone like Mouse is better. Either way, the double Falcons, I even tweeted about this because it's kind of funny how it ended up going. I believe I actually picked it after the Pain game, so this is a slight lie. I think I recorded as this Eternal Fire Falcons game was being played. I think Pain had already lost because it has to have been seeded. Either way, Falcons were looking kind of strong, honestly. Beating teams like VP, for example, 2-0. Just generally just getting wins on the board, and then after that they haven't won a match. So unfortunate. I took a gamble. It didn't pay out. It didn't pay off. I thought Spirit would maybe be focusing on other events more than this one, and it didn't work. They're looking very strong again, so I have to be probably looking at them in the future events. For example, this one, where in groups A and B, Spirit is playing in group B. We can take a small look at all of the matchups and brackets. So FaZe, Sangle, FlyQuest, Eternal Fire. Again, of course, with two groups, I would be looking at getting the players from the teams that you expect to at least make it to upper finals, and hopefully even win the upper finals. At least 4 of your 5 players, I would say, should be players that you expect to do so. FaZe, Sangal, FlyQuest, Eternal Fire, I would say FaZe are the favorites, and then Eternal Fire, based on how well they're doing in Bet Boom Dasha right now, I would assume should be probably making it to the upper semis, but then FaZe against Eternal Fire is going to be a pretty tight matchup. Eternal Fire is the kind of team where I think they can really step it up from event to event. Like, they can definitely win an event. They can always make it far. They can also have that kind of event where they just kind of don't do as well, kind of fizzle out, if you will. Right now they're on a bit of an upswing again, but I don't know. They aren't a reliable team in the way that some other teams like a Mouse Sports or a Navi right now are. Then again, FaZe is also not reliable currently, so who knows? They could lose to Sangal, but I would assume they at least beat Sangal, and then I would assume Eternal Fire beats FlyQuest. And then it becomes a question of which one of those two teams wins in the upper semis. I would say it's a pretty close matchup. And yeah, one of those teams is going to be a pretty decent pick because they make it into the upper finals. Just to tell you why it's important just to make it to the upper finals instead of winning in the upper finals. You don't actually play another game after upper finals. Either way, whether you lose or win, you're always going to get some padding from the previous rounds because you didn't have to play in the lower bracket, and you are going to be getting directly into playoffs. The only reason to play the upper final is getting one step further in the playoffs bracket. It's of course better to win the upper final as well, because if you win, you're going to get higher ratings, you're going to get winning points, but I would focus on getting to the upper finals first as like a primary objective. The lower bracket, I would say Heroic Nip. These two teams I feel like they're playing against each other quite a lot. I just don't feel comfortable picking either of them. I don't think either of them is good enough of a team in this selection of teams. I think there's definitely way better teams to go for, and I wouldn't even look at like budget options from them. I don't think there's any that are good enough. Then Navi, Linvision, I would say Navi obvious favorites in this entire group. Going double Navi is definitely something you should consider. They are the #1 ranked team in the world. They have a very easy first matchup against Linvision. That should be like, I don't think Navi usually struggles in this kind of matchup at all. I think that the firepower is just too much. They're going to win this, and I would expect them to win here in the upper semis as well. And I would expect them to beat either team from Fate or Eternal Fire, or if FlyQuest, for example, somehow makes it, I would expect them to win in the upper finals. So I think double Navi is the obvious safe pick here. Then Group B, I would say there's two teams that you would look at, and those are Spirit and G2, generally speaking. So Spirit, of course, looking very good again. They are gonna absolutely farm wildcard. I have absolutely no questions about that. I think that wildcard is about to get absolutely crushed in this matchup. And then 9Z MIBR, I think 9Z obviously slightly favored, but kind of a 50-50 matchup. I would say Spirit either way should be favored in the upper semis, but I wouldn't be completely like shocked if, for example, 9Z beats Spirit. It could happen, but I would say Spirit's still favored. And if you want to go for the safest pick out of Group B, that would definitely be Spirit. Then the lower side, G2 Koi, I would say G2 obviously favored. Should beat Koi, but we've seen Koi do decent things before. It's not impossible for them to show up if G2 have one of those weird days where they just don't show up. For example, if Monesi just doesn't shoot back. He's had some of those games, but generally speaking, still the most reliable player on that lineup. And then Nico, Malps, Hunter. I mean, this lineup, of course, on paper should always beat most teams, but we don't always see that happening. I would still say G2 is a decent gamble to go for if you don't want to go for Spirit on this side, or if you want to go for just one of Spirit's players. They also have Mongols or 3D Max next. I would say 3D Max we've seen some good things from. They won that one random event. But generally speaking, I would still say Mongols is favored. Higher ranked team. They've generally been showing a very good base lately. They had that one event as well where they weren't that strong, but I would say they're one of the more consistent teams in the scene at playing up to their level. And it wouldn't be surprising again if Mongols actually beats G2. It would be a lot less surprising than, for example, 9Z beating Spirit. And that's probably why I want to go for double Spirit as well. I just think there's some there's definitely a world where Mongols beats G2, and I don't want to go for double G2 because of that. G2 as a budget option. I think Snacks is just not someone I really am interested in at all, and everyone else is a bit too expensive. If I wanted to go for G2, honestly, it's like Monesi, who I would be looking at, just because he's usually the hard carry of the lineup. Nico has been showing pretty good face lately as well, but I would be still way more comfortable picking Monesi than him, especially for this price. I think it's honestly kind of decent, and he's the kind of player who usually does well in these group stages and such. But I'm just not convinced in Snacks as an individual. I don't think I want to go for him. So if I wanted to go for a Monesi lineup, I would probably go just Monesi and then other players, because this format kind of allows for you to not double up on a team where you have an expensive player. You can expect Monesi to put up a lot of good numbers even if they don't win the upper final, for example, and you think Spirit's gonna win. The first lineup that comes to my mind, which I think I'm probably gonna go for, involves a very weird pick, kind of, but it's like one of the cheapest players, and that's Alistair, the second cheapest after Stanislav. I really hate picking Alistair, but I'll show you after we make the lineup why I think it's kind of a better pick than it used to be. Just generally, the cheapest players are slightly better as picks. So this uses your money perfectly. You get to pick Donk, who was insane in the last event. I don't expect he's gonna slow down too much. Ime and Alexi actually some of the better picks value-wise from Navi for these group stages. Usually Ime doing very well in these group stages, especially. Like, he just seems like he's playing up. Generally, he's playing up to a very high level in group stages, and then in playoffs, he's not bad, but he doesn't maybe play up to the same standard as before. whereas someone like JL, for example, in the group stage is going to be a bit more muted, not going to frag out as much, and then in playoffs he can have those incredible performances. Kind of like a bit, I would say like Wonderful and Ime are the kinds of players I would pick in group stages right now, and then JL and Bit the kinds of players I would pick in playoffs. And then Alexi as a budget pick is generally better in group stages, but you can pick him in playoffs as well if the price is right. And here I feel like this just makes a lot of sense for Navi. I was looking at different lineups for sure, but this allows you to go for Donk and double Navi and double Spirit, which makes a lot of sense to me. Some other line. So this is what I'm probably gonna go for, unless I change my mind. So other lineups. I had Monesi at least in one of my lineups. Trying to remember what the actual lineup was, but it was maybe something like this. Probably Wonderful Alexi. Yeah, it was this, I think. This was one of my lineups where you kind of go 2, 1, and 1. 2, 1, 1, and 1. You get Monesi, you get Wonderful with a double up on Navi. The problem with this is that I do want to go double Spirit, I feel. And I'm not that convinced in FaZe as a team. I made some double FaZe drafts as well with like Carrigan and Rain, or Carrigan and Robs. But then you don't get Donk. You might not double up on Navi. I don't know. I think there's options. You could go for a FaZe play if you want. You want to go check the most picked players. Like I'm picking the 3 of the most picked players in my draft here. But Donk is, for example, pretty lowly picked, which is kind of interesting. Just very expensive this time around, but I think it's just gonna be worth it for most of the time. Interestingly, 1.22 rating only. But I don't know if that counts the last event at all. Is there something else to talk about here before I lock in my lineup? Eternal Fire. Some people I saw kind of think of picking them. It's not a bad gamble, I think, because they definitely can beat FaZe in this upper semi and then make it here. It's just that like Major is the only player I would feel comfortable picking for 180. Antares maybe as well. I would say these 2 are the ones I would really feel comfortable picking, and everyone else is just a bit too inconsistent maybe. I don't know. Voxic's been good in this event, in the past event, but I'm not that high on him personally. Apart from that, no, I'm not considering anyone from these teams. Not really from Mongols. Maybe you could go for a Mongols player if you really think they're gonna beat G2. Like they did in some previous event, by the way. But I think this is just the first lineup that I thought of. It's the lineup that to me makes the most sense. And I'll actually have a centered Donk this time around. I usually play around with the placement just a little bit. I'll have a centered Donk. Maybe that's the new strat instead of the centered cheap player. Yeah, by the way, just in case you didn't know, this is a pretty important thing. They changed this sponsor booster, so this used to be doubling the roll points for one match, which I was never the biggest fan of. And I did in my changes I'd like to see video point out that some booster changes, role changes would be fun. So I'm kind of happy that at least some of it got through, even though I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with me. But still, this is a pretty interesting booster that allows you to essentially have 0 points for one match. So if you think Alistair is gonna go pretty highly negative against Eternal Fire, like I probably do think is gonna happen, we can just have this booster and he's gonna have 0 points. I think that makes picking these super cheap players a lot better. Someone like a Carrigan, Hooksy, whoever. These bronze players who you don't think are gonna do, who are there to enable you to get Donk. So I think those players got a slight buff here. Of course, you still would hope, for example, with Alistair here, I would say FlyQuest probably loses to Eternal Fire, but then they probably beat Sangal in the lower bracket. And maybe Alistair's gonna do well. He usually doesn't do very well, which is weird because he's like the AWPer for FlyQuest. They just don't have better options right now. But yeah, I would say there's a real chance that he can actually put up some good numbers against Tangal. And then I don't know about lower semis, but because it's probably gonna be like, I think it's actually from the winner of the lose. How does this work? The loser of the winners here, so it's probably gonna be Heroic or Nip. And who knows, FlyQuest could actually do decently in that kind of matchup as well, so I at least think that it goes this way around, that it actually isn't the upper semis loser from your side of the bracket in the lower semis. But yeah, I would say, generally speaking, support on Alexi B, the best role. Chopper, eco-friendly, the best role. Then it becomes interesting between Ime and Donk, because Ime's best role is kind of like multi-fragger. I'm probably going there. But then it's also the best role for Donk. The thing is, Donk also has other good like roles that are insanely good. Like Hacker's really good, but I would say Stat Hunter, just too good to ignore for him. So I'll go Stat Hunter, Donk, and multi-fragger Ime. And then Alistair, the question is like, he's gonna get 0 points against Eternal Fire anyways, because we used this booster. So it doesn't matter what role he has for this game. The question is how, like, which booster do I, which role do I want for him starting with Sangal game? If we expect that to be the first game for him. And like Noob is something I was considering. It could be AWPer, but these stats are kind of weird because these are stats from all of their games in like Oceania region, for example. You could go Attacker, you could go Camper. That doesn't sound like a bad option either. But then again, like this Camper only works when either you're, I think it's like, what is it, deaths per round max bonus. It's deaths per round, so if you're losing a lot of rounds, Camper's not very good. But then, if you're losing a lot of rounds, you're also not going to get the main op. But then, if they don't end up losing a lot, if they, for example, beat Sangal very easily, then Noob feels very bad, because you might get this penalty. So it's a weird one with Alistair here. But I think Camper, for me, is the one that I would like to go for, and just hope that in the Sangal game and the games after that, he's at least able to be saving an op if they lose, or they're just winning and he's going to survive in those situations as well. So that makes sense to me. After that, it's all best of threes. Just go for good roles, good boosters. For example, KST on Donk should be absolutely free. He's always going to do something against a team like Wildcard, I would say, every round. I would at least expect that. For Chopper, I would say Farmer for later, just in case he's gonna be he's gonna need that for later. Like for a harder matchup is essentially the thing. Ime on the pistol might be an idea here. I think we're gonna win pistols against Lin Vision. Ime can definitely do well there. Donk, of course, has higher percentage, but I think there's going to be enough roles for Donk, or enough boosters to use for 3 matches anyway. Like, top of the scorecard is going to be Donk, 100%. Avenger, probably going to be Donk as well. Yeah, I think those 3 are the ones for him. And then, what else do we have? So, Assist is probably going to be Ime in a harder matchup. SMG is going to be for sure Chopper, but in a later matchup. This could be Alexi, probably, but in a harder matchup. Headshots, probably Chopper. Chopper doesn't actually have anything yet, so we can go aimbot Chopper versus Wildcard. He has a pretty decent headshot percentage, I think. Yeah, like 60%. I did not know that Chopper has this high of a headshot percentage right now, but that's pretty cool for a slightly older guy like him already. And then like Alexi, of course, Kobe is one of these things that he's good at. What else works for him? So this is probably going to be used for later. What else is good on him? These 2. Bottom scorecard might be Alistair in a later one. It's either bait or it's probably Grenade here, to be honest. I think I'll use the nade booster here. Okay. So this is like the most obvious lineup to me because you have like the 2 best teams doubled up and the best player in the event, who I think is going to do very well. And I think those Navi picks are actually very good. Even though they're the cheapest ones, I think they're great value picks for this kind of event. Let's hope we can turn this season around, man. It's been a very hard season so far. For some reason, I feel like even if I'm picking the right teams, I'm picking the wrong players from those teams. And in the cases where I pick the wrong teams, they are really the wrong teams. Like Falcons, for example, last event was complete disaster. But, you know, all you can do is pick what you think at the time is correct, and then the games happen and you can't overthink the results, and just play your own game, I guess. Either way, if you enjoy this kind of content, please remember to leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.